The Old Testament rituals are full of symbolism. Some of them, like Passover, are easy to understand. The Passover meal looks back to what God did when he brought Israel out of Egypt, and it looks forward to the Last Supper and ultimately to the cross, when the true lamb was offered for the salvation of the world. But not every ritual is that clear. One stands out as especially strange: the ritual of the red heifer in Numbers 19. According to Jewish tradition, this law was given to Moses along with its explanation, yet only the ritual itself was preserved. Even Solomon, famed for his wisdom, is said to have admitted that its meaning escaped human understanding. So why would God command a ritual that makes the clean unclean and yet purifies from death? The answer is this: without Christ, the ritual is a mystery, but with him, it becomes a prophecy. When the red heifer is understood in light of Jesus, every strange detail suddenly makes sense. A sacrifice outside the camp, an offering without blemish, a death that brings life. And in this video, we're going to see how one of the most puzzling laws in the Old Testament points directly to the sacrifice of Christ. The first significant item is the animal itself. A red cow being of full age signifies Jesus, who was cut off at the age of full vigor. The heifer had no blemish, just as Jesus was perfect and without sin. The heifer had not carried the yoke, so Jesus was never under the power of sin. Usually the sacrifices are offered by the priest in the temple. The one exception is Passover, when the laity kills the Passover lamb, but even that was done inside the temple precincts with the priests involved. Here the people bring the cow to Moses and Aaron, who give it to Eleazar, Aaron's son, and he takes it outside the camp. Paul takes this up in Hebrews, stating that we should go outside the camp to suffer with Christ, who was killed outside the walls of Jerusalem. Next, it appears a group of people slay the animal in front of Eleazar. The Hebrew Masoretic Text says he will slay it before his face, but the Septuagint uses they will slay. The Dead Sea Scrolls, Vishahatu Ota Lefanav Hebrew, supports the Greek and suggests a group of lay people, probably the ones who brought the heifer to Moses, slay the victim. Although the Hebrew version implies a different he, not Eleazar, slaughters, and later rabbinic tradition has a priest or priests performing the whole ritual. Either way, Eleazar sprinkles the blood towards the tabernacle once the heifer is slain. So while the ritual took place outside the camp, it was within eyesight of the tabernacle. In the Mishnah, it details a bridge going over the Kidron Valley to the Mount of Olives, where the ritual could be performed. Although it rarely was, one possible location would have been right to Gethsemane. Next, someone else burns the cow completely, and someone else collects the ashes, which are kept in a holy place outside the camp and guarded. The Mishnah records that the ashes were then divided into 3 parts. One part was deposited on the Chel, a rampart, one on the Mount of Olives, and one was divided among the priestly watches, who most likely took them back to their home cities. Because following the ritual, we see why it was instituted: to purify those who had touched a corpse. The ashes were mixed with water and sprinkled on the one who became ritually impure from contact with a corpse on the 3rd day and the 7th. This implies that the ashes were sent throughout Israel once they entered the land. Otherwise, people would have had to travel to Jerusalem to be purified. And this applied not only to Israelites, but also to the resident alien, Ger, who dwelt among them. One of the few times non-covenant people participated in Hebrew ritual life. So all people who suffer from death are purified by the life-giving waters, and only through them, not just Israelites. This signifies the call and salvation of the Gentiles, who are brought to life through the death of Christ and the waters of baptism. Another point well noted is that everyone involved in the ritual becomes unclean, even though the ashes bring life, signifying that everyone involved in the death of Jesus became unclean or sinned, even though his death brought life to the world. Finally, you could not purify yourself with this water. Someone else, who was clean, had to do it, and the person who did so became unclean in the process. This is a symbol of the necessity of confession, to be cleansed from sins after baptism. It also foreshadows our duty to make disciples and evangelize, because once baptized, when go amongst the world with its sin and temptation, we in a sense become unclean and need to be washed, but the whole of us, but just the feet. As James says, religion clean and undefiled before God and the Father is this: to visit the fatherless and widows in their tribulation, and to keep oneself unspotted from this world.